Welcome to the Sober Uprising. My name is Holly Crevo, a former heavy drinker who started a Sober Uprising of her own a little over 2 years ago, and everything in her life has changed. On the Sober Uprising, we tell stories of finding freedom from alcohol on our own terms, making it our biggest power move. So, I am super excited with a special episode today around the holidays. It is Monday of Thanksgiving week, and we are in it. We are in it. It is officially the holidays, although I know some of us, myself, put up our tree a little early, but that's okay because we get to do what we want, right? But we are in it. And the holidays can be such a tempting, triggering, enticing time to drink. We're traveling, we are going to parties, we are having all these moments that in society has kind of told us we need alcohol, right? We're watching Christmas movies, we're decorating the tree, all those things. So, I want to share some tips I have for those of you out there who are sober curious, sober-ish, whatever you want to call it, or maybe even just wanting to make a little bit different choices this holidays to be more present, to have more energy, and just to really experience it. So I'm going to share a little bit of those. And before I do, I want to share a story this past weekend. So I had the amazing opportunity to go work with a coach that I adore and work on some messaging and programming for Sober Uprising, which will be coming soon. So it's really, really exciting. And I realized that even after almost 2.5 years of being soberish and being really intentional with all my drinks and knowing that like most of the times I don't want it after I have one, or like they don't fuel me. I know very clearly that alcohol is not, don't want to make it a leading factor in my life, right? I'm very, very clear on that. And travel, new places, airports, airplanes are such a time that I go back to old programming of thinking, ooh, I want alcohol. Ooh, I want alcohol. So the airport. I used to love a glass of wine at the airport. And then obviously on the plane, you could get a Bloody Mary or you get to your hotel. And it was so fascinating to watch, to just look around and see people drinking at the bar. And this like thing that came up really quick, like, ooh, that would be nice. And I was like, no, 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 no. If it was nice, it wouldn't have become a thing that was not nice for you, right? And so I just had a lot of moments over this trip that were just great awarenesses for me to be like, wow, even when we know it feels better, even when we know that it's not what we want to do, it still can come up. So I got to the hotel. They had this like 2 free drink thing. And I didn't have anything. I went and paid for a bubbly water. Went back. I got room service. I poured it in a cute glass, and that was that, right? But it was such a moment of, ooh, but that would be nice. And maybe it would have. But I had decided before I went to Miami that I wasn't going to drink, right? So I'd made that decision before and wanted to honor that decision. But that moment of, oh wow, like a wine at the bar is like just great, right? And then it came up again when we got done with got done with our session, and I was walking around Miami and I went and had sushi and I had some time, right? I was like, okay, now what do I do? There were shops and I walked around and looked at shops. I'm not a huge shopper. I wasn't going to go out nightlife. Like I didn't really know anybody else there. So it was just myself. But I realized how much time I filled in with alcohol. And I was like, well, isn't that interesting? Right? Like now what can I do? I ended up just going back to my hotel, doing a little bit of work, reading, going to sleep early. It was great. Right. But again, that romanticizing of what that looks like. And it was great. And with Gabby, the coach I worked with, she knows I'm on the sober journey. And so we had, she had mocktails and that wasn't a thing with her, but it was just really fascinating to me how much in that opportunity it still came up. So I just want to share that because that's something that I think a lot of people may struggle with, because if drinking was a part of what you did on travel, that may be coming up also for you during the holidays, because I know that for me, it definitely, I kind of, you start to romanticize it and glamorize it. And then you have to take a step back and say, wait, is that true? And again, one glass on either of those nights would not have probably changed anything, but it was that I had decided before not to do that. And I really wanted to honor that and be of complete clear mind during those 2 days that were really important to me. So really fascinating, great awareness for me, especially when I'm going on trips, like being really prepared for that. So talking about preparation, let's talk about some advice as you go into the holidays. Again, it can be really a time that we want to drink. with our friends, with our family, to celebrate, to cope, all those things, right? And it's almost like we feel like we get like a free pass for December between drinking and food. And that's why January, everyone's like ready to be their best self. And it typically fails because it's a lot of pressure to put on ourselves. That's a whole nother topic. But I just want to share a little bit if you're somebody, again, who's sober curious, sober ish, or maybe just wants to do things differently this holiday season around alcohol. So, again, the focus as you go into the sobers is really protecting your peace, protecting your energy, protecting your health, and really this focus on being present, which most of the time does not involve booze, right? So we can so many times feel like we have to have a drink or we have to do a lot during the holidays, right? We have to invite the certain person, we have to go to somebody's house, we have to buy this amount of gifts, all these things. Like it's like in the holidays, there's like a Men in Black like memory eraser. We're like, we forget that we have a choice in all of this. And I know as somebody who struggled with that, right? Thinking that I had to do certain things a certain way. And it gave me a lot of stress and anxiety. And so now it's really the focus on the power of choice. And especially if you're in this place of wanting to do things differently, focusing on your power of choice is so important during the holidays, right? Knowing that you don't have to have drinks when your friends and family do, knowing that you don't have to go to somebody's house for an event if you don't want to. Does it make that decision easy? No. Are there sometimes consequences you have to deal with after that? Not even consequences. That sounds negative. Are there conversations you may have to have? Are there things you're going to have to do that make it a little more difficult? Absolutely. But you can still have that choice, right? And so even knowing that could be a little bit of a relief of, okay, I can do things my way because I'm a grown woman who does my own thing. So again, wanting to share 4 or 5 things that have worked for me and that worked with my clients when we're going into these streaks of wanting to drink or drinking opportunities. One, and this is the most important, just decide. The definition of decide is to cut off. So really you're cutting off anything that's outside of that decision. I think it's really important if you're new into your sober journey. Don't say you're not going to drink from, Monday of Thanksgiving through the end of the year. That could feel really, really, really hard, right? If you can, that's great. But maybe it's a baby step. Maybe it's saying, you know what, I'm not going to drink on Thanksgiving Eve. The next morning, Thanksgiving, reset. What's your decision? Decide again. Okay, set that plan. Because so often it's too overwhelming. That's why I've created the Soberish Uprising community and coaching is to say, okay, how do we create these smaller wins and these visions and this experience of what it feels like before just saying, hey, I'm not going to drink for the next 45 days, even though for the past 30 years, that's what I've done. So make those decisions. Again, on one-offs. I don't have a not drinking plan for me over the holidays. I will say that when I tracked my drinking in, excuse me, in my second year of soberish, I had 23 drinks. 12 of those were in November and December, with 9 being in December. That's like, what, 60% something of my drinks, which is fascinating to me. And again, I have no regrets of those. I was present. I did not get drunk. I know it didn't have more than 2 drinks. I am not mad about those. And it's a really good awareness of like, ooh, there are going to be a lot of opportunities. So I need to be really strategic and decide before I go into them what that looks like. And again, deciding before you go into it is great. So many times we was like, oh, let's see how I feel. And if you've been drinking all the time, you're going to feel like you want to drink. You're going to be like, no, I'm fine. And somebody's going to offer you something. You're going to say no. And somebody else is, you're going to have just one. And then, the night you have one, spikes all your endorphins. You're feeling great. You have one more, right? Because 0 drink Holly makes way different decisions than 1 and 2 drink Holly, right? So again, it's deciding before, knowing it's just for that night. We can do anything for that time and just making that decision. Again, because even like I said, even for me, who this will be my 3rd holiday season going through this or being soberish, I don't have like, I'm doing X amount of drinks, but I'm going to be really intentional with those events that happen. I have an event. We're going to a gala fundraiser in early December. This is an example of, I think, even now, my decision is to not have a drink because that next morning I have a podcast that I really excited and I want to be at the very top of my game. So I'm not going to have a drink because I know I'm going to be staying up later. So like I'll probably still have to get up early. Like I know my sleep will be a little off. I don't all that. So I'm like, I just can't add that alcohol. So that's the decision. So again, just decide before you walk into that event. And also know that you don't have to decide for the whole time, right? Like let's baby step this. Second is prepare. We can't go in to the same situations, do the same things, and expect a different outcome, right? So when I talk about preparing, I want to talk about like internally preparing and externally preparing. Internally preparing, very, very, very important. You can call it self care, you can call it rest, whatever you want to call it, but making sure that you are in full alignment before the holidays inside your body. So maybe that is making sure you're eating well, making sure you're sleeping, doing your meditation, doing a workout, playing with your dogs. Do the things that fuel you, that make you feel really strong, so that when you do go into situations, you're not tired, you're not hangry, all those things that can come up and kind of weaken our defenses, weaken our statement that we said we're going to do, right? So really be prepared. If you're going in to an event and you decide not to drink, but you also are hungry, you also haven't slept, you got in a fight with your spouse, you haven't worked out all day, you haven't, or the past couple of days, whatever that looks like, it may be a lot harder than if you're just like, everything else, I am like prepared for this. Okay. Because it can feel like a lot when you walk into a situation and don't drink for the first time. I know for me it was going to a holiday and not drinking, that like took a lot. So it was a lot of journaling, it was like sleep, it was making sure I had snacks, which goes to that external piece is be prepared. If you're going to a restaurant, look and see if they have a mocktail menu. If you're going to a friend's house, take your own drinks, like take your own non-alcoholic wine, take something to make a mocktail, be prepared, because we can't go in and I think we do this subconsciously or to self-sabotage. We're like, no, they'll have something and then they don't. And then like, well, that's all I'll have. Right. And be that leader, be that person that takes a 6-pack of non-alcoholic. They've got the cans of sparkling rosé or a beer, and be that leader of somebody who's not going to drink and like share, make it a thing, or don't make it a thing, but make it a thing. Right. Like, hey, do you want one? I guarantee there are other people at that party or that event or wherever you are that are in your space. I guarantee that. So be that leader. Again, we're preparing internally. We're making sure we're rested. We're making sure we're full. We're making sure we're not like snippy with our spouse. We're doing all the things to like fuel our bodies. And then externally, we're taking sparkling water. We're taking non-alcoholic wine. We're taking snacks. I've always take snacks everywhere. Whatever that looks like for you to feel like you can go in with a plan. Because again, we can't go in and want things to be different and do the same thing. This is another good one that can feel a little uncomfortable at first. And it is to communicate. Tell the people around you what your plan is, right? For this example of this gala, I'm gonna let Katie know, like, hey, I'm not gonna drink, so that she's not trying to be kind, be like, hey, can I get you wine? Like she just knows. So like she knows, like, okay, I'm gonna grab her a sparkling water. If they have a good mocktail, I'll grab her that, right? Like communicate with your people. They want to support you. Another example is if you are going to like a friend's house, just let them know ahead, hey, I'm not going to be drinking. If you're comfortable going to a place around alcohol, right? That was something I was always okay going. But I let them know because I know that they want to be a good hostess. So they're going to offer me something, or they're going to want to get something for me to have if I'm not drinking. But I always kind of say, hey, I'm not going to be drinking, but I'll bring my own stuff. Or if they say, can I get you something? I'll say, yeah, if you want to get me some XYZ, right? But like let people know, because it can take some of that awkwardness that we think is going to happen before you get there and get in the moment. Again, this is all done before, right? It can be a little harder when we're in the moment. And if we get peer pressure, or if we like, okay, one won't hurt, doing it before, clarity is kindness. Let your people know that that's not something you're going to want to do that night. And explore, this is a good one to, always come back to throughout this whole thing, right? Remember why it's important for you to not have that drink or to lower your drinking. Like it's never about the like glass of wine. It's about the how it makes you feel, how it makes you show up, what you feel like 2 days later, right? So come back to that, because so often we say, oh, it's just that one glass, but the one often turns to two, or even that one, we get upset 'cause we're like, I didn't need that. Like, so just come back to your why. There's a bigger purpose. You're listening to this podcast. There's a bigger purpose that you are wanting to be alcohol free. Like, tie into that. Maybe it's a journaling before you go. Maybe it's like visioning yourself not having that drink, but having a phenomenal time. It's also after. It's that next morning when you've had your very first Thanksgiving sober. You're like, hell yeah, like celebrating that. Take yourself out for a coffee, go buy yourself something nice, like tell your friends, whatever it is, and plug back to the why. Because so often we get caught up in like, it's just the drink and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, no, 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 no. We're saying no to the drink because it affects other parts of our body, right? And our soul and our mental and all that. So come back to that through and through. So in conclusion, decide. Decide before when you are really tied into how you want to show up, decide. And then that is it. And we can do those in little bits and pieces, right? We don't have to decide for the whole time. Prepare both internally, making sure you feel really good, and externally, make sure you have other options to drink. Communicate. Let your people know. Clarity is kindness. It does them a great service for them to know where you're at so they can support you, right? I think you will find that. And also tying back into the why. Again, we often forget, we're like, oh yeah, this is why it's important. And me wanting to be a woman who doesn't have my power over to booze is way more important than a glass of wine on Thanksgiving. Or it's not, or one, or not, it's not, it is. That's always more important than wine. Or that one glass is okay. And I am aligned with that, but I just want to have one and then other options. But again, tying back to that why is so important as we make these decisions. So, whatever your soberish journey is for you over the holidays, I am proud of you. I wish you luck. And if you doesn't go how you want it, you get to start again that next day, right? My soberish journey was not an overnight success. There was years of I'm not going to do this, and then I would. So it's okay. You're making the moves, you're trying the things. And again, every day just make that decision on what that looks like for you. So I hope everybody has an amazing Thanksgiving, and we will see you after. And remember, everything you want is on the other side, and say no to that drink.